Welcome to the Seize the Day weekly podcast, your connection to all things cruising, powered by Travel with Brigitte.
And I'm Julie Williams, along with Travel with Brigitte travel agent Carla Mesa. This is the Seize the Day cruise show. So today we're going to talk about what are the essentials that you better have with you, the documentation, even to get on the cruise ship, because you won't get on without them. Of course, the obvious one, Carla, would be the passport.
Yes, I'm going to say that's first and foremost. And, you'll probably still be allowed on without your passport, especially if you're returning to the same country. But with every cruise, you're usually going to enter a new country at your port, and you just never know what could happen, and you need to have your passport on you. That is definitely first and foremost. On top of that, a little fact that not everyone knows is your passport also needs to have at minimum 6 months before it expires. It needs to be valid for another 6 months before it expires for it to be considered valid for use. From when you're using it. Yeah, exactly. So 6 months from the moment that you have your passport. So I'm using it for this trip, you still need another 6 months past that first day of your vacation. Yeah. I know for some people I think the first time I heard that, I was even like, well, then why is there an expiration date? Why isn't the expiration date 6 months prior? And I still don't know the reason. All I know is that is the rule and there's no going around it. But if you're looking at your passport right now, don't freak out if you're not going to have those 6 month pad after your cruise. There are ways to, expedite, or even if you have an actual emergency, get a same day passport. So if you do have any questions about that, or that is an issue you think you might have, reach out to us and we'll definitely help you out with that.
Yes. The other thing I'd like to suggest as far as a passport goes, I think, by the way, that 6 month rule was not instigated in the U.S. I think one of the other countries or a couple of other countries that we cruise to have that rule, because you have to have the documentation that you need for the U.S. or for getting on the ship, plus you have to have what you need for each of the different ports.
Yes.
So, and we'll tell you a little bit about that. But also, when I got my passport renewed, I also got a passport card. Kind of an ID, looks like a driver's license, right? It cost a little bit more, but if I were to lose my passport, the passport card is just as good. So it's like having a backup passport.
I wouldn't say it's just as good. I'd say it's very good to have, and especially in cruising, because it does work the same way as a passport for the ship. But say you were in a circumstance where, you're at the port and you didn't make it back to the ship and you have to fly home, or you have to fly into the States or fly into the next port into a different country, your passport card is not going to work. It is not going to replace your passport. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, be careful with that one. As far as the flying goes, no, the passport card does not carry the same weight as a passport. It would be equivalent to just like your driver's license or your state ID. I will say a good point that you brought up, though, it is a real ID. So if you haven't gotten a real ID for your driver's license or your state ID and you happen to have a passport card, that is valid.
Okay. And is even an older passport going to pass for a real ID because it's a passport?
So I'm going to say that if you're going to try that, still have a different form of ID that isn't expired. And usually with them paired together, they will take that, but it's going to be very dependent on the TSA agent or whoever is determining whether or not they think that that's valid. Because I've actually been in that situation before where I crossed a border walking, I believe, and I only had my regular state ID or driver's license, and they were kind of pounding me on, well, why don't you have your passport? And I said, well, because it's expired. And they said, well, it doesn't matter, bring it anyway. Again, I was kind of like, well, it doesn't have an expiration date. But so that's my experience, and that's the only reason I'm saying that it could be okay if you bring an expired passport with another ID that is valid.
Wow. Okay, so if you have any questions about passports, you can either email us or you can post a note below and we'll check those and we'll get back with you, or we'll have somebody, able to answer your question. Okay. The next thing I would say is the cruise boarding pass, your e-ticket. Carla, where do we get those? I mean, like a lot of times you can get your boarding pass when you get to the airport for an airplane. Where do you get them on the cruise ship?
So there's a number of ways you can get them. First and foremost, you're going to have to check in first to receive them, for them to become available. So you can check in online. You can have your travel agent check in for you sometimes, depending on the cruise line. A lot of cruise lines also nowadays have their own app where you can log in and check in as well. And then your boarding pass will be provided to you either via email. They can send it, PDF to your email, or again, with these cruise lines that have their own apps now, it could just be uploaded right into the app and available for you, kind of like some airlines nowadays as well. You just kind of have a QR code ready there for you. Or you can have your travel agent, like I said, depending on the cruise line, they can check you in and they can email you or even mail you your boarding passes if you'd prefer to have something tangible, piece of paper in your hands.
Okay. And then how about the tickets for the baggage claim, your bag tickets to make sure it goes to the right place?
Yes. Same. So those are all available at the same time, usually. So if you're doing it yourself, if you're, getting the boarding pass to your email or to the app, you will have to then print the actual baggage tags yourself. Or like I said, some travel agents are willing to do that for you and mail them to you as well.
Yeah, you can take those baggage passes and like cover them with tape or something, but I would protect them better. It's so easy and not expensive to get just the plastic holders, but what you need to do is you need to get the size for your cruise line, because that's going to vary. And, you can just get them on Amazon. I don't remember what they cost, but, I got more than I'm going to need. And then next time, if it's a different cruise line, I'll just get those and just keep the collection of them. Because it really makes
that's a great point.
In that you keep the tags on your bag and you keep them from bleeding because it rained, and then nobody knows who it is and where it goes.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would even suggest that, because you're right, there are different sizes depending on the cruise line. I would even go get the biggest one, and then you don't really have to worry about it after that. I mean, if you just have to fold the paper down, and it might be a skinnier one than the first one you used, but it'll still fit in there.
And some places require that you have a government issued photo ID along with the passport. Like in the U.S., you wouldn't need that. They qualify as the same. But if you're going to a port that does need that, then to get on the cruise, you will need that, because whatever is required at each port, it's my understanding that even if you wanted to stay on the ship at that port, you can't go if you don't already have whatever that government requires for you to come into the country. So
yes,
what would constitute a photo ID besides, say, a driver's license? Can the cruise card and can the passport card and passport suffice?
Yes, a passport card is considered a government issued photo ID as well as the passport, but we're talking about, an additional one to your passport, right? So I would say the passport card is valid, driver's license, state ID, military ID as well. And I want to say there's one more, but again, it would have to be some type of like official government issued ID.
Like anything that qualifies as a real ID.
Right. So, you may not be military ID, but if you have some sort of government job, you may have a different type of government issued photo ID, and I believe that counts as well.
Yeah, and with the immigration mess our entire world is in right now, what is the situation with, say, visas? You know, I know when I went to Mexico, I went on a bus and I couldn't understand everything they were saying. So I think I'm telling you correctly. I had to like, I get what I think was like a temporary visa for $40 that was like for 6 months I could come and go.
Yes.
So what about visas, or any kind of like immigration documents to the places that you might be stopping?
Yes, so it's going to be very specific on where you're going. And as a travel agent, when we're, planning that and getting your ports, getting your crews together, figuring out what ports you'll be stopping at, we will do all the research to make sure that we, apply for the appropriate visas if they are necessary. So it can be very broad, but especially when you're leaving this general area and going further out, you're more than likely going to need a visa. Like, I know for a fact that Brazil just reinstated their visa requirement for US citizens this year. I know that China still requires visas from US citizens. India still requires US visas. The visa you're talking about from Mexico, that is a tourist visa, but I do believe you have to, it's for a specific amount of time. Like, if you're going to be in the country of Mexico for longer than like 10 days, that's when that visa is required. So that's why it's typically not required for cruises.
Right. And yeah, I've never been asked for that on a cruise. And, I go Caribbean all the time. And so there's always Mexico somewhere, like Cozumel is, generally going to be on the itinerary. And I've never had to have something like that for there. But, I know that there's immigration issues between the U.S. and Mexico, the southern border. And so I didn't know if this was part of that, but it was going by bus down from Texas into Mexico that this had happened. So, and I don't know that, Carla, I don't know if you know it. I would imagine some of the Mediterranean states would require, especially like, what if you were going to go to, say, Turkey, or, I don't know about the other states that are along the Mediterranean, what they would require, but even perhaps in Europe.
Yeah. So like one area, so Europe is obviously a continent made of many different countries, and some countries have formed what they call the Schengen area. So when you're within that area and you're traveling to different countries, again, I believe it's depending on the duration of your trip, that specifically will require a visa. But I do not believe it requires them from US citizens. It's from different nationalities.
Okay. Yeah. So, and again, that's something that your travel agent will have to look up, and you definitely want to get your travel agent to do that, because the last thing you want to do is fly to Europe and find out you can't get in because you needed to get the visa like a month ago or something.
Right.
Okay. Now here's another one: travel insurance documents. I know that we need to have travel insurance and we need to have the documents with us for our own use when we need it, or like for, say, the clinic in the other country, or on board the medical center on board the ship. But mandatory seems like a big word. Is it mandatory to have travel insurance documents with you?
It isn't mandatory. It's just that in the event that something does happen, it will make things a lot easier, especially if you're the person that's doing all of the planning and has everything on you, and then it turns out that you're the one with the medical emergency and you have to depend on someone else to maybe go through your email or figure out where they're supposed to get this information. If that makes sense, that's when, again, if you just had it printed out in your backpack, your life would be a lot easier.
Yeah, if you're like me, you'll have a couple of copies. One will be in the safe, one will be with you, one will be online. You'll be able to get it anywhere.
Especially if you are, a bigger group or, a family, that have one for each person. Have have them have their individual copy on hand. Have that in your backpack. Have a screen. Everyone can have a screenshot of it on their phone in addition to that as well. Because that was my other point is, what if you don't have internet? What if you didn't pay for the package? What if you're at the port? What if you're out on an excursion in the middle of the jungle?
Right. Exactly. And then, this is like, if you're going to go into a jungle place, this might be relevant. Vaccination certificates. And I think of that because with COVID, we needed them, but now now we don't need a vaccination card for COVID most of the time. And that could change any minute, so what about other vaccination cards, like say the measles or anything else?
One that I'm very familiar with, because I have quite a few clients that go to Africa often, is the yellow fever card. That is a really big one in Africa that you have to have proof of. And it's actually also in South America, most of South America as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the COVID-19, that's not required right now, right? Or at least like in the US areas?
Correct. That's not really on the radar right now. And that's the other thing, is that, like you said, that could change tomorrow. They can make an announcement, say, okay, this is the new requirement for, the next few months or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And medical documentation. I think of bringing prescriptions, and I don't bring the prescription bottle. I bring it in one of those pill things where you put like all of Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And, there are a handful of supplements in there. I couldn't even name what each one is. I got them straight from the bottle, but for the prescriptions that are in there, I don't have the prescription bottle with me. Sometimes the bottle got thrown away when I took the stuff out and put them in the, the daily things.
Yeah. Not just for travel, but in general, I would say it's best practice to keep those, if you can, keep your stuff separated until day of. But if you can't, again, just even keeping the bottles that way, two reasons mainly. One, legal reasons, so that you can prove that that is a prescription prescribed to you specifically. And my second point would be, in case of an emergency and you needed more, how would you go about getting it if you don't have, either your prescription bottle proving that this is the amount, this is the dosage that your body can handle and that it is actually prescribed to you? Like I said, there could be a medical emergency that happens at a port and you have your travel insurance, so everything's going to be taken care of and you're going to have to stay there a few days. But, you were supposed to go home the very next day. So you only you only have 1 more day's worth of medication, but you won't be home for 5 more days.
Yeah, that's true. I can tell you're a mother the way you think.
I have to think about this stuff.
People bring CPAP machines. I don't know if you need a prescription for that, but some people bring that. I hear that a lot. And other types of equipment. Do they need medical notes that say, he has to have this CPAP machine, this person needs that refrigerated medication, stuff like that?
As far as I know, they don't need it, but I think it's best practice to have it, especially when you're in a different country or in an area where you're sharing space, because I know someone that travels with their CPAP machine, and if I were sharing a room next to them, there may or may not be complaints. So who knows about strangers? And if that's something where, then the cruise line is like, well, do you really need to have that? And then you can say, yes, I really do. And here's the paper saying so. Well, then case closed.
Mm-hmm. And what about proof of either the fact that you're going to keep going, you're going to leave today and keep going, or leave tomorrow, whatever, at the port, or, that you're not going to just become an immigrant right then and there because you got off a cruise ship. I mean, what about any kind of proof that you have like a return ticket or, or something like that?
Yes. So not so much for cruises, just because, most cruises are, round trip. Technically, it is a round trip ticket. It is I'm going and coming back all within the same, ticket, price point, boarding pass. But for other types of travel, yes, you're absolutely right, especially international travel. When it comes to even like booking your hotel or like checking in, they want to see proof that you have a return date, that you have a ticket and you have accommodations for leaving and going back to your home country.
Yeah. On the ships, I can see why might not be as necessary because they know where every single person is. They know who's off the ship, who's on the ship, who was late and missed the ship. There's no question. They know exactly who you are. In fact, often it's my understanding that if somebody is late, there's like a custom officer at the port, and the cruise line will get your passports and give them to them. And then if we're late, then we're to report to the immigration officer at the port. I mean, everybody will be able to tell us where, because I'm sure there's someone late for every ship.
It does happen. I think people are better at not letting it happen as often, but definitely happens.
Right. Okay. So now there are a few ports that have specific documentation that is needed for citizens from certain areas. And again, your travel agent can tell you, but we have a brief synopsis of some from or traveling. Wait a second. Is it from or it's traveling to Alaska for Canadians, for different people, for Europe, for Australia and New Zealand, for Brazil and China and some of the Caribbean and the Galapagos. So do you have any of those you'd like to speak to?
Yes, we have a few. So I'll name a few that we deal with specifically because there are a number of them. And again, just exactly like you said, it has everything to do with your nationality, where you're a citizen, and where you're going to. So one that we see very often working with US and Canadian clients is Alaska. So going to Alaska requires Canadian citizens to have an electronic travel visa. So that's for flying into or out of Canadian ports. So one very popular one, Vancouver. So that is a requirement. We kind of touched on Europe as well. It's not really a US citizen issue, but for other nationalities within the Schengen area, you do as well need a visa if you're going to make multiple stops in different countries. I know that I believe in Australia and New Zealand, they have also transitioned into, well, they call them ETAs now, but they're electronic travel authorities. So it's electronic travel visas pretty much. And I know that those are now requirements for Australia and New Zealand. And then like we mentioned earlier, Brazil just reinstated their e-visa requirement for US citizens starting in 2025. So that was a little bit new for us.
Mm-hmm. And do you know how far in advance we as U.S. citizens would have to apply for that? Or I guess ask your travel agent.
It does depend. I would generally advise the sooner the better, but some countries have limitations on that. They actually don't want you to do that. They want you to apply 3 weeks within your trip or something. It's very dependent on the country and their requirements. Some countries also require that you have accommodations set already before you even apply for these visas. So they don't want just anyone saying oh, I think, I might book a flight to Australia next year. So let me just start the visa process. They're not going to allow that. I know I just did one for someone flying into Kenya, And the requirements were having the flight information and hotel information before you could even apply for that visa.
Any others that you find regularly through Travel with Brigitte, commonly?
Sometimes for the different Caribbean ports, like the smaller, not as popular ones, they will require some kind of like online immigration, like pre-clearance before arrival.
Okay.
That's a thing as well. And then some places, even coming back, they'll want you to fill out some type of form. Like I know when you're flying back from like Hawaii, you have to go through, not only do you have to go through TSA, after you go through TSA, you actually go through like a USDA screening where they're looking for any plants, seeds, fruits, like any vegetation that's not allowed to go with you. So they're going to check for that. They're going to screen for that beforehand before you make it to your gate. And then even on the flight, I believe that's leaving Hawaii. And then when you come to Hawaii, you usually fill out a form kind of saying the same thing, that no, I'm not bringing anything into Hawaii that's harmful, like, for the vegetation or for the natural wildlife. And then you just kind of fill out whether you're like there for, tourism or business or whatever.
Right.
So it really is. It's even within the country, sometimes you can have some requirements like that.
Yeah. We have covered a whole lot of information today. So first, I want to thank you for listening. And what we've done is we've compiled kind of I don't want to call it a cheat sheet, but sort of a reference list. Let's call it that. A PDF reference list for you that has all this information on. So you can go into the notes section below and get a link to download that. And be sure to let us know what you think of the podcast. And of course, like and share and subscribe. We would love all of that as well. This is the Seize the Day podcast. Julie Williams, along with travel agent extraordinaire from Travel with Brigitte, Carla Mesa. And until next time, we encourage you to seize the day.
You've been listening to the Seize the Day podcast, powered by Travel with Brigitte. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. And as always, feel free to ask us anything in the comments section. We love to hear from you. Or email us at bookings@travelwithbrigitte.com. Till next time, seize the day.